Hey guys, it's Cloudy. How are you all? Today we're going to be talking about a K-drama that I recently finished called The Judge from Hell. The Judge from Hell stars Park Shin-hye, who plays Kang Bin-na, who is a demon and prosecutor. She ends up being sent to Earth because she wrongly prosecutes someone, and she has to punish 10 unrepentant criminals and bring them to hell for justice before she can be allowed to be reinstated as her job as a judge from hell. She meets a police officer who's named Han Da-eun, who's played by Kim Jae-young, and Kim Jae-young has a very traumatic relationship with one of the serial killer cases, which becomes one of the biggest cases that the show attempts to solve. They end up being entangled together because Kang Bin-na is trying to release these criminals from the legal court so that she can capture them later as a demon and pronounce judgment on them on behalf of hell. Versus obviously because Han Da-eun is a police officer, he wants everything to be done by the book, and he's like kind of curious why this prosecutor is mysteriously letting criminals go when it's so obvious that they are guilty of their crimes. So there's a sort of push and pull in terms of like the conflict of ideals and also the conflict of like how to deal with criminals and bad people. So for my likes of the series, I have a list here. I'm gonna go through all the likes, and of course there's gonna be spoilers because we are talking about the show. So if you haven't watched the show yet, go check it out right now. And if you finish the show, I'm really curious as to what you guys think of some of these things. I feel like the show had a lot of potential at the beginning because it's so interesting to see a demon judge trapped in a human body and forced to live and interact among humans, kind of play along with their legal system, but ultimately just like throw all the rules away and prosecute however she wants. Kang Bin-na, or Justitia, the demon, is definitely very unhinged. Actually, now that I look at it, I didn't really like Justitia that much as a character. All of the things on this list that I liked are like unrelated to her. So first off, Han Da-eun as a character, I really loved him as a male lead. I felt like even though he was human, you never felt like he was outsmarted by the demons, and he had a very like solid head on his shoulders. He was very put together, and he was just a really good like police officer. I think he was very like persistent, he was very just, and he embodies a lot of good ideals that are used to contrast Justitia's character throughout the series. Second is I really love the crime investigation team. Even though the team itself was a small part of the story, the relationship between the team leader and Han Da-eun was kind of special because she was basically like his adopted mom or like foster mom after he lost his parents. So they have a really good bond, and I love how it fosters this like family environment among the police team. You really feel like they actually care about each other. I also loved Mando, who was Justitia's lackey. He goes through this entire moral dilemma of like whether or not he should become Christian or go to church, but in reality he's like a demon, so he kind of struggles with his identity and trying to figure out like what ideals that he aligns with, because even though he's a demon, I would say he's a little bit like softer and a little bit more shy than typical demons who are like quite violent or emotionless. So I just loved watching him kind of like struggle with his inner goodness and his like inner self. I also loved all the side characters who lived in the neighborhood where all the events took place. I felt like they had a really good community and they were recurring characters, so you could slowly build rapport. I didn't really notice them that much at the beginning of the show, but as we move on throughout the story and we see more and more of the plot unfold, all of the side characters are actually somewhat linked to the big investigation that's related to the serial killer case, which I really enjoyed. It felt like every character was put to good use. Finally, I really like the fantasy aspect. I feel like when it comes to fantasy or supernatural shows, some of the world building that gets hinted on is very interesting. I felt like the concept of Satan running away from hell and taking along a special artifact was like also very interesting. However, I didn't think it was like really handled very well, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And so I'm going to jump into some criticisms right now. Like I said, the world building feels very shallow. At the start, you get to see a little bit more of hell, a little bit more of their like hierarchy, their systems, the sort of like checks and balances that happen if you wrongly prosecute people, because obviously if you wrongly prosecute a soul, that is a really big deal. And I also really enjoyed how we got to see the cleanup crew from Hell come onto Earth. So there were all these like little support aspects that kind of built into the world. However, when it came to the part about Satan and the Kylum artifact, some of the things fell a bit short. I felt like Satan was a very cookie cutter 2D villain, and rather than him being like an actual formidable antagonist that they're kind of chasing throughout the entire show, it kind of feels more like Kang Bin-na slash Justitia's inner struggle of like how to prosecute criminals. I felt like that was a little bit more of a greater antagonistic force. And also Han Da-won, when he catches the killer that killed his parents and his family, what does he ultimately choose to do? Does he want to prosecute this killer by the law, or does he want to get his personal vengeance? I think this kind of like tug of war inner conflict is a greater antagonistic force than the actual Satan character. My next issue is actually with Park Shin-hye and Kang Bin-na's characters. I feel like I'm so used to seeing Park Shin-hye play like super sweet, wholesome girl characters that I literally cannot see her as like an evil or just like immoral kind of supernatural entity. I just felt like she was so human, and she had so many like iconic characters before that I wasn't able to see her as like a totally different archetype character. I also felt like Justitia was kind of like a dumb demon because she's lived for like many centuries. I feel like it shouldn't be this easy for Han Da-won or other humans to catch on to the fact that she's a demon. Like, she should be doing her dirty work a little bit more subtly so that nobody catches her, because she's a demon. She should have magical superpowers. I thought she should be like a little bit more OP. Maybe she has like mind reading powers, or maybe she has like powers where she can like manipulate people. They do show a lot of her like supernatural powers in relation to the dagger that she uses to punish people. And also she's able to make criminals relive their own crimes. It's sort of like karmic punishment in a way. They get to receive all the pain that they dealt out. So I think it's very fitting for a character, but I just wanted to see more fantasy overpowered aspects. When I watched Hotel de Luna with Chang Man-won's character, like IU's character was really prickly and cold, and you could tell she was just this grumpy lady that's been alive for many centuries, and she had those sort of like stubborn traits, but I didn't really feel that level of like selfishness when it came to Justitia's character. Also, my biggest issue is I just didn't feel like the leads had a lot of chemistry. Maybe because the crime-solving, criminal-punishing action aspect was so strong throughout the show, I don't think we had that much time for Justitia and Han Da-won to actually build up their relationship that much. There are certain moments where she says like the right line that resonates with him, but besides from those like spark moments, I don't really feel like there's a lot of like deep layers that build up that address a lot of issues. Like, for example, he is literally dating a demon. He finds out she's a demon later, and he seems like totally fine with this. He's not like freaking out over the fact that she's like over 500 years old. He's not freaking out over the fact that demons actually exist, or that one is inhabiting the body of this like human woman. He never questions like, what does your true demon face look like? So I feel like there are a lot of like relationship issues that are not really addressed throughout the show that other fantasy series actually try to touch on a little bit more. I didn't feel like the prophecy for Kang Bin-na and Han Da-won was that intense. I wanted to see more like random incidents, like a random car crash suddenly goes their way, or she gets attacked randomly by someone. Because it's like a curse, I feel like it should have played out a bit like the Midnight Photo Studio, where we saw more freak accidents, not just the final like serial killer kind of you're gonna die in the end destiny prophecy. Okay, finally, as for thoughts on the ending, I really like the main issue that they touched on in regards to the prosecution of the serial killer. So very end is where we get to see how Justitia's judgments become karmic rather than lawful. So as a prosecutor, there are a lot of like legal clauses, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of like logic that's behind that sort of like profession that you have to follow. There's just a lot of sets of rules that you have to follow when it comes to prosecuting certain criminals. And I feel like when Justitia sentenced the serial killer to die, it was her way of giving karmic justice through the legal system. But that doesn't really happen in justice systems like super often. And especially in Korea, the death sentence is just not something that is common like at all. It's just not done. So I feel like because it was so legal, it sparked a lot of controversy. And I really liked how they showed the public response where people said, yes, we should punish the serial killer even though the statute of rights have expired. And then legal experts who say, is this the right way we should be going about law and authority and like giving judgments? So I thought that was a really interesting issue that actually reflects our current realistic justice system and societal issues. However, I feel like because it was only about the very last case, we weren't able to see these intricacies fleshed out through the rest of the plot. And I really felt like there should have been a little bit of moral dilemma when it came to every single case. Because Justitia's character was kicked out of hell because she was not prosecuting properly. I feel like she should be a little bit nervous when prosecuting, like have this dilemma of, am I doing well, am I not? What is the right way to prosecute humans? And like just taking into account all the small factors and features and details of each case, I think we should have showed more of Justitia's inner struggle as a prosecutor and like what it means to be a good prosecutor to humans versus to demons. Overall, Judge from Hell is a really great fantasy crime show to get into if you don't want to get into anything that's too deep or twisted. I watched a lot of these shows before bedtime and I never felt like I was feeling too anxious or scared to sleep. A lot of times if I watch really like dark, mystery, investigative shows, I get like super anxious. I feel like someone's gonna jump out of under the bed or like from my door, but I didn't feel that for this show. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you can tell the show is definitely very like fantasy forward. So it doesn't feel super realistic. The investigations go super quickly, so they're not like very intricate or deep. And also there's a lot of comedic relief when we see the banter between Kang Bin-na and Han Da-won, and also between some of the side characters. I definitely feel like the side characters were there to offset Kang Bin-na's more demonic qualities, because the neighbors, the Christian Ajuma, like the cute little helpful like mom and son, they were just so human and they were so caring. So I just love the contrast and I thought it was really cute. So what I'm saying is, if you love Park Shin-hye and Kim Jae-young, I think it can definitely get you through the series. But if you're watching the show with a critical eye, it's not going to sit well with you. I would advise you to just turn off your brain and then just enjoy the show. There are definitely some aspects of the show that are a little bit cringier than like other aspects because they have a little bit of CGI and some like fantasy aspect and like choreography. But other than that, it was a pretty good show to watch. I would give it 2.5 out of 5 stars, like exactly 50%. It might float your boat, it might not. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed it for fall, and I'm hoping to see Park Shin-hye take on darker roles. Then maybe we can see her like expand her like repertoire to like more intense or like thrilling stories. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more from me, and I will talk to you guys in my next one very soon. Bye!